Welcome to the Voices of Healthcare Equity. I'm Kim Tranquata, founder and CEO of the Healthcare Alliance for an Equitable World, and your host on this journey. Our organization, driven by clinicians, is on a mission to address global healthcare equity using telehealth solutions. Together, we're building a community of healthcare professionals committed to making a scalable impact on global equity. Join me in insightful conversations with health innovators across the globe as we explore the current and future state of healthcare. Be a part of this mission. Let's create lasting change together. Today's episode features my friend, Dr. Hokehe Echo, pediatrician and CEO and brain health coach at Glow Pediatrics. She is also the founder of Kits of Hope nonprofit. Dr. Echo specializes in ADHD and autism care for children and has been recognized for launching the first Black-owned virtual autism clinic in the United States. It's my great pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Echo, to this podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kim. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here.
I'm so thrilled to be able to chat with you today. Before we start, I always offer our guests any opportunity they need to have any disclaimers for affiliates or any conflicts of interest. Do you have any?
No.
Okay. Then with that, let's please get started. Let's start with a little bit about you. Tell us about how you came to be involved with pediatrics and autism and ADHD.
That's a great question. Do you want the long or short version?
You can go long, it's fine.
All the versions. Okay. So I've wanted to be a pediatrician since I was 5 years old. I grew up in Nigeria and I witnessed my childhood friend dying from asthma because her parents didn't have the money to get her the treatments. And so I decided I was going to become a pediatrician. But I was also extremely scared of hospitals and needles. I was that kid you had to hold down in the clinic to get shots. So go figure. But that's what I told myself I was going to be. And that's my earliest memory at 5. And so fast forward, I came to the United States at 16 to go to college. And then I had 2 car accidents exactly 6 months apart. So I was taken to see a neuropsychologist because my grades dropped. And so after testing me, he asked me what I wanted to do. And I told him I wanted to be a pediatrician since I was 5 years old. And he told me that I would never go to medical school, that I was less than average, and that he suggests I find something else to do with my life. And so I believed him at first, and I proceeded to fail out of school that semester. But my parents insisted that I was going to be a doctor, and it didn't matter what doctor said, and I was going to go back to school. So I went back to school. I struggled. It was hard. My short-term memory was affected at first, but with continuously hearing that I was going to be a doctor and they would accept nothing less. And so soon enough, I started to believe it myself, and I applied to med school. I got in, and and here we are today. So that's how I became a pediatrician. As for how did I get into the world of ADHD and autism, so I was a general pediatrician for about 10 years, and then I don't know, it's just somewhere I just started to feel like there was more, and I wasn't sure what that exactly meant. But anyways, I signed up for training at our practice for child abuse because in the state of Oklahoma, I think at that time there was one child abuse pediatrician in the whole state. So they decided they were going to train general pediatricians in the rural area, which is where I was, to be able to take care of children with child abuse because we had such high levels of it going on. And so during that training is when they talked about trauma and how it changes the way your brain functions. And I had never heard that concept before. We weren't taught that in medical school at the time. So I'd never heard that concept. So it made me start. So I had that information in my head, and then I started just questioning the things that happened with my patients, and especially with children in foster care. And that's when I realized, oh my goodness, so this is an extra layer of trauma that the children face. The fact that they're pulled away from the only home they know. And I understand that with some foster kids, they are pulled away because of neglect or harm. But some is just poverty, as I came to find out later. A lot of them, it's because their parents are not able to care for them because of poverty. So, anyways, I started talking to the foster parents in my practice, and I kept hearing the same theme over and over again. They get dropped off in my house with nothing but like a plastic bag, or often with nothing at all. And so, in my mind, I'm thinking that's trauma to a child, because one of the first words a kid will say is mine, and now you don't have anything that's yours and you're in a stranger's home. That has to be traumatic. And so it made me start thinking about what I could do to help these children. And so that's how Kids of Hope was born, right? I decided I could do something about it. And so I and some foster moms in my practice, we put bags together of brand new items for the children. And we took it to DHS, Department of Human Services, and we said, here, hand these bags to the children when they get pulled out of their homes. So in those bags were contained comfort items like books, toys, underwear, socks, because we kept hearing they didn't have those basic things. And I insisted they had to be brand new because I wanted to convey a sense of value to the children, that they are worth it. And so I did that, and that's how that was born. And so I remember after I dropped off the first set of 100 bags, I was like, okay, so now what? Then I realized, I figured I had to start a nonprofit. So that's how that happened. And then I came across a young man in my office. He was brought into my office because he had been in 10 foster homes in 6 months. And if you know anything about, I mean, I always ask people to stop and pause and think about that. You're 4 years old, you've been pulled out of the only home you know, and you've been in 10 strangers' homes in a span of 6 months. So, what kind of behavior would you exhibit? So it's one of two things. It's hard to contain you because you just don't know what to do with your emotions, or the opposite, where you're unresponsive, right? So it's one of those things. So, anyways, this little boy was running up and down, like hitting the walls, and then would come back and give me a hug. That was a significant thing because my brain took note of that. I'm like, I got 15 hugs in about 15 minutes. And so I heard myself saying to the person who brought him, first of all, he's too young for me to give him an ADHD diagnosis. Yes, I see the hyperactivity. Or can you find him a home where he'll be loved? And I myself was like, where did that come from? Because that's not the usual thing we say, right? And then the guy was looking at me like I too was crazy. And I was like, okay. I stuck to my guns and I repeated it again. I was like, find him a good home. And so they did. And I saw him a few months later, and he was sitting on the laps of this foster dad, and there was no more hitting the walls. And he gave me one hug, and he was just content to sit in his arms. And I was like, oh, wait, where did the hyperactivity go? So that got me thinking, like, oh my goodness. So trauma can show up as hyperactivity. And if we're not asking the right questions, we're just going to be medicating kids. So that's when I started doing some more research into the whole trauma, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and and then I discovered integrative medicine, because I'm like, okay, so we really need to ask the questions. That's what the missing key is. I'm not against medications, but we need to ask questions, because then I discovered I had another patient who showed up with hyperactivity at 12, and I'm asking the questions like the teacher, she came with a diagnosis from her teacher. Teacher says, yes, my kid has ADHD, so give her medication. I'm like, well, not so fast, hold on. So I asked mom about her home, and she said, yeah, everybody thinks I'm crazy. So when I enter my home, my daughter, and the dog, we all feel sick. And when insects fly in our home, they die. I'm like, they die? Okay. So please, can you not take my patient back to this home? She said she wouldn't. So I saw this patient 6 weeks later, and there was no more hyperactivity. So then it turns out that there was a horrible case of black mold in that home. And that's when I was like, oh, wait, hold on. environmental toxins can cause hyperactivity too. I had no idea. So that really got me going because I was like, we can't keep not asking these questions. And that's what led me to doing my TEDx talk, which is titled, We Must Change the Way We Treat Children's ADHD. Because all I'm saying is let's ask questions about the home, the environment, trauma, emotional health, before we stick kids on stimulants, which have their own set of side effects. So that's how I got into that. And I have completed a fellowship in integrative medicine because I realized that it's not just medication. We need to treat the whole child, right? And often and also bring the parents along with it, because if the parents aren't doing well, the child won't do well. And so that's my approach. It's like a whole family approach, even though I'm treating your child, right? And then with autism, it was like a light went on in my brain one day that why is the wait list for autism diagnosis so long in my state? It's a 2-year wait list. And at that time, I had just left my job where I was being harassed. And so I was just, what can I do to help children? And then remembered that there's that wait list. So I was like, I can do something about that, because as a pediatrician, we always talk about early intervention, right? It's so critical to make interventions first 5 years of life, because brain growth is so accelerated at that point. And if you want to make changes in the way the brain functions, you need to do it then. So, for example, if your child is not speaking by 18 months, we need to start speech therapy. So, not wait till they're 5 and now we're trying to catch up, because at that point we're playing catch up. And so I got trained to do the evals, and that's how I started. My practice doing evaluations for autism and ADHD, and then recently expanded to being virtual, because I realized it's not just in Oklahoma, it's a problem across the United States. And so that's the long answer to your question.
Wow. You are doing, I can only describe as earth shattering work. Holy cow. Um, First of all, the origin story of um, being told by your neuropsychiatrist that you were never going to be the person you knew you wanted to be, and how that could have impacted and changed the whole course of your life if not
Yes.
for the encouragement of your parents, and then you taking that in and believing in yourself, and how you're literally carrying that forward to all these kids that you're seeing right now. You're like, I believe in you and you're going to be great, and you're helping bring that out for them and change their future. And this innovative approach to ADHD diagnosis, I mean, beyond a TED talk, I mean, you need to start a new specialty. You need to write up all these case studies, and just because kids are being diagnosed with ADHD based on symptoms all over the United States by the thousands, and changing the course of their life with medication without understanding where their behavior is coming from. I'm pretty sure you're creating a new specialty, and you're the founder of that as well. You mentioned some key questions that you are learning from these experiences that lead to whether this is ADHD that needs medication or perhaps something else. Can you teach us some of those key questions? Like if there's a parent on the other side of this, or a pediatrician that's like, yeah, I don't really love giving all these kids medications. What should I ask? And then what should I do with that information?
Right. Yes. Thank you. That's a great question. Um, So I typically divide things into four segments. So brain, gut, emotional, and environmental health, because that basically sums up all of us. So if you start asking questions, so with the brain, what are the things that affect the way the brain functions? Sleep, ADHD could also be called the sleep disorder. And so if you're not asking questions so the questions you need to be asking are, does the child have trouble falling asleep? Do they wake up in the middle of the night? Are they snoring? Are they grinding their teeth? Because snoring and grinding your teeth, that's an indication that's essentially CPR, like the body is doing CPR because it can't get enough oxygen in. And if you think about it, what organ needs the most oxygen in the brain? Sorry, what organ in the body needs the most oxygen? It's the brain. The brain is not getting enough oxygen in. It's not going to function well, no matter what meds you give it. So asking those questions about sleep hygiene, are they sleeping with electronics in the room? Because we know all the research about electronics and the blue light and all of that, and what it emits decreases melatonin in the brain. So it's like a bad cycle we need to break somewhere. And and um and do they wake up tired? Those are the key questions for sleep. And in terms of the gut, because the gut and the brain direct talk to each other, they're like directly connected, and there's so much conventional research to to show that being done by all the major hospitals, and that the gut has a second brain. So a lot, I would say 95 to 96% of the children I take care of, they're all constipated. So constipation by itself, I mean, the body, we're not built to store up all that. So when your child is constipated, that's inflaming the gut. And if the gut is inflamed, your brain is next, because they are connected. So whatever injury or impact is made in your gut, it's going to affect your brain and the way it functions. So I always talk about constipation and how we can pass Miralax. What can we do? It's making changes, it's taking out things like dairy and gluten, because those two things in particular have been shown to be so inflammatory to the gut. And I've seen it over and over and over in children that I treat, because I also do ongoing care for them after the diagnosis, is that when we clear out their guts, take out all the things, the foods they're eating that are inflaming their gut, it does improve their behavior. So those are the questions you should be asking. Are they constipated? For children with autism, do they seem really aggressive from time to time? Because that could be an indication of pain, right? Do you see your child rubbing against a piece of furniture? That's an indication of that they're in pain. And right, they often end up in the ER, either being extremely aggressive or completely backed up, and then now we have to start disimpacting them. But if we're addressing it at home before we get so impacted that we have to go to the ER, then it definitely helps. And just what are you eating? What are they drinking? We all know there's all this research about dyes in our food that directly impacts behavior. So if the chef, for example, if they're eating Fruit Loops with all the colors of the rainbow, that for sure is going to set their brain on fire. I like to say it has set the brain on fire to make a point, because that's literally what it's doing. That's what inflammation is. It's setting your brain on fire. So you are what you eat, and our children are what they eat. So if we're feeding them things that will harm their tummies, it's going to harm their brain and impact their behavior. So that's the gut. For emotional health, um, are they how are they relating to others? Is there any bullying going on? Bullying is such a huge problem. Oh my goodness. And if we're not asking the questions as parents, I often say, put your phones down, like connect with your kid, make eye contact with them, figure out what's going on in their schools. I even tell parents, make surprise visits to the school to go see what's actually even happening in there. Because things may be happening. Your kids are there for all these hours and it's impacting their behavior, and you may not realize it. So it's important to figure out what's going on. Do they have friends? Can we set up friend groups for them? Because all of that impacts how they think about themselves and um and how their brain functions. With environmental health, I told the story about about mold, but lead too is a big culprit. um, Lead toxicity to the brain will change the way the brain functions. Um, there's so much of the pesticides. So, are you drinking filtered water? What kind of water are you drinking? Because the water we drink is extremely important, and um, what's the source of your water? That's important to note as well. And when I talk about um, environmental health, it's also important to watch out for the foods you're eating. Are you washing your fruits properly? Because all the things we eat have chemicals on them, right? For the most part, even even the ones that are called organic, you still need to wash them properly. And if you're not, then you're just simply increasing the levels of chemicals your children are exposed to. And it definitely makes changes in the way your child's brain functions. So those are just a few questions.
Woo! That was just a small micro mastermind on how to carry out integrative healthcare for children with ADHD and really make a lasting impact on whether they carry a diagnosis or whether they actually can change their behavior for the rest of their life and be healthier, have a healthier brain. Because everything you described is basically whole health, right? Sleeping, gut health, what you eat, your emotional environment, and then your environment in terms of toxins. That's important for the whole family. I imagine that not only is the child helped, but the whole family is helped by these
Yes.
interactions,
Yes.
making everybody healthier and happier. Amazing. Woof. I can't wait to hear more about what you are also doing with autism and what you're doing with Kits of Hope. And I hope we can get you back on our show to talk a little bit more about those things. What you're doing just with what we were able to learn about today with ADHD is amazing, so needed, and so important, and really ties in with that voice that you were not even sure what it was saying, but was saying something to you when you were in general pediatrics. When you talk about the work you're doing now, that you are on fire. You're lit up and on fire. So I think you've answered that voice. That voice is now speaking very loud and clear. So I'm really glad that you're doing this in the world and that we get to hear about it. How
Thank you.
can our audience connect with you, with your autism, virtual care, with Glow Pediatrics, all of it?
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for what you just said. I appreciate it, and thank you for sharing it with the world. So, best way to get a hold of me, the website is glowpediatrics.com, and that's where parents can go to sign up for evaluations for their kids for both autism and ADHD. For Kids of Hope, oh, I'm also on the different social media platforms, so Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I have a podcast as well called Brain Power with Dr. Echo. That's everywhere you can listen to a podcast, and it's also on YouTube as well. And then for Kids of Hope, it's the website is KITS of Hope, so kidsofhope.org. And that's where you can go to find out more about what we do there.
Woo! Thank you, Dr. Hokehe Echo. So wonderful to have you. In today's podcast episode, we explored the vital role of pediatrics, autism, and ADHD care. If you're a pediatrician and would like to join our global healthcare and telehealth community in providing important care to under-resourced communities across the globe, please go to https://haew.org to learn more and join us. Podcast listeners, please leave us a review, share with a friend that you think would be interested in this topic, someone that needs a little support around ADHD, autism. Dr. Echo is a wonderful resource and has virtual care. Please, if you'd love to be on this podcast or know somebody that would be a wonderful guest for this podcast, please contact us at drtdr.t@haew.org. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Echo. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you're as inspired as I am.